The chatter around Windows 12 is reaching a fever pitch right now, and if you have been tracking tech news, you have probably seen the leaks, the concept designs, and the endless speculation about when Microsoft is actually going to drop it. But we need to hit the pause button and talk about what is happening behind the scenes, because the reality is far more concerning than any rumor mill suggests. Microsoft is already sneaking the foundational elements of their next generation operating system straight into Windows 11 through major feature drops. And based on everything we have seen unfold recently, I am telling you flat out that you should not upgrade. In fact, if you are still comfortably running Windows 10, moving to Windows 11 right now might be one of the worst tech decisions you can make. Stick around, because we are going to break down the timeline of events, the shocking performance regressions, and the severe privacy risks that make this quite possibly the worst era in Microsoft history to trust with your primary machine. If you're new to Nolan Tech, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. To understand why the future of Windows looks so rocky, we have to look back at how Microsoft operates right now. Officially, Windows 12 hasn't been given a release date or an official marketing name, but internal development has been moving at a furious pace under code names like Hudson Valley, with industry insiders pointing toward a late 2026 or early 2027 rollout. The catch is that Microsoft isn't waiting for a fresh launch event to implement their new vision. Major cumulative updates like version 24H2 and the subsequent 25H2 updates are effectively serving as live-fire testing environments for Windows 12 architecture. That means the bugs, the intrusive background features, and the experimental AI integrations plaguing users right now are just a preview of what is coming down the pipe. To put things into perspective, 2025 was arguably the roughest 12-month stretch Windows 11 has ever endured. Major update failures piled up at an alarming rate, crossing well past 20 documented widespread issues in a single year. Take the update rolled out at the very start of 2026, for instance. Users woke up to discover their PCs refusing to boot entirely, throwing the dreaded unmountable boot volume error screen. For anyone who relies on their computer for daily work, seeing your system brick itself overnight because of a routine background patch is a nightmare scenario. Microsoft response amounted to a casual acknowledgement and a promise to look into it for the next patch cycle, leaving thousands stranded with dead hardware until workaround guides could be published. It wasn't just boot failures either. Throughout the year, updates systematically broke core hardware integration. External USB digital to analog converters used by audio professionals, musicians, and audiophiles suddenly stopped outputting sound entirely. Imagine investing hundreds or even thousands of dollars in high-end studio hardware only for a Tuesday operating system patch to render it completely useless. Bluetooth connectivity suffered a similar fate, where devices would successfully pair, but routing audio through them resulted in total silence, forcing users to hunt down temporary fixes that took weeks to materialize. Even the basic security and maintenance tools weren't safe. The Windows firewall started throwing false critical error alerts, panicking users into thinking their systems were completely exposed to external threats, while Microsoft claimed the issue was resolved long before it actually stopped. When users tried to use the built-in reset, this PC function to clean slate their malfunctioning systems, they frequently ran into a wall because that tool was broken by the updates as well. The irony of weren't an operating system breaking its own recovery mechanism is almost comical if it's so frustrating. Minor UI bugs added to the daily friction. Language packs would randomly glitch out, leaving settings menus half in English and half in an entirely different language, making troubleshooting a frustrating guessing game. The password visibility toggle on the login screen, that tiny eye icon meant to let you check if your credentials were correct, straight up vanished for a stretch of time. With official tech support forums suggesting users awkwardly wave their mouse around until a hidden outline appeared. Dark mode users were subjected to blinding white flashes every time a new folder window opened, a minor annoyance that quickly becomes exhausting during late-night work sessions. Meanwhile, Task Manager developed a nasty habit of refusing to close properly, spawning multiple invisible background instances that silently chewed through system RAM and CPU cycles until users manually hunted them down in the process tree. The scale of these updates has ballooned out of control too. Recent packages have grown exponentially in file size, largely because they are being stuffed with proprietary AI frameworks and Copilot system hooks that a vast majority of the user base never asked for and does not use. If you're working with a metered mobile hotspot, a limited fiber data cap, or an older hardware configuration, being forced to download gigabytes of mandatory data just to receive routine security patches feels less like maintenance and more like software bloat. Major tech publications began documenting the collapse of user trust, noting that the reputation damage Windows 11 has sustained rivals or even eclipses the historic backlash faced back in the Windows 8 era. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. Recognizing the mounting pressure, leadership at Microsoft finally began walking back their aggressive rollout strategies. Executives publicly acknowledged that the feedback from the community has been brutally honest, admitting that the platform has failed to deliver the reliability, performance, and stability that users expect. Behind closed doors, emergency protocols were enacted, redirecting engineering teams away from building flashy new features and onto emergency bug-squashing details just to stabilize the current codebase. They even initiated a formal performance fundamentals initiative aimed at optimizing background resource management, power scheduling, and graphics driver coordination. While course correction is welcome, it raises an obvious question. If the architects of the operating system openly admit that the current foundation is unstable and requires a fundamental rethink, why would anyone rush to adopt the next iteration built on top of that exact same unstable codebase? Building a new operating system tier on a foundation of recurring patch failures is a recipe for ongoing frustration. Yet, the performance instability is only half the battle. The deeper concern lies in how Microsoft is handling user privacy, specifically through features designed to capture and index your entire digital footprint. Enter Recall, an AI-powered utility engineered to take continuous snapshots of your desktop activity every few seconds, cataloging everything you do into an on-device searchable database. In theory, being able to naturally query your computer history to find a document you viewed weeks ago sounds like a futuristic productivity leap. In practice, the initial implementation was a privacy and security disaster. When security researchers first examined the architecture behind Recall, they discovered that it stored collected data in an unencrypted plain text database. Every password typed into a browser form, every private banking session, every confidential medical record, and every sensitive corporate document was sitting in an open directory waiting to be harvested. Independent researchers quickly built proof-of-concept scripts capable of extracting a user's entire digital history within seconds, demonstrating just how exposed the system was right out of the box. Government privacy watchdogs in regions like the UK immediately launched formal investigations, while leading cybersecurity firms classified the feature as an inherently dangerous attack surface that granted malicious actors an unprecedented vector for data exfiltration. Faced with intense pushback, Microsoft pushed back release timelines multiple times, implementing additional safeguards along the way. They shifted the feature from opt-out to opt-in, tied access requirements to hardware-level BitLocker encryption, mandated biometric authentication via Windows Hello, and introduced a sensitive information filter designed to catch credit card numbers and passwords before they hit the database. However, independent security testing revealed persistent flaws in how those filters operate. The underlying logic struggles to recognize sensitive data unless it is explicitly labeled with precise contextual keywords, meaning financial statements, personal identification numbers, and private credentials still routinely slip past the filter and get immortalized in the screenshot cache. When your operating system is silently photographing your screen thousands of times a day, relying on heuristics that frequently miss critical financial data is a massive gamble. The risk profile simply does not match the marginal convenience it provides. Third-party developers have even had to build their own digital defenses to keep user data out of Microsoft's automated capture loops. Communication apps like Signal integrated advanced screen security protocols to block capture attempts entirely, while modern web browsers implemented aggressive countermeasures to prevent private browsing sessions from leaking into system-level databases. When privacy-focused applications have to actively wage war against your own operating system to keep your conversations confidential, you know the ecosystem has crossed a line. Looking at the broader picture, the trajectory of modern desktop operating systems is clear. Tech giants are aggressively pivoting toward cloud-integrated AI services, telemetry collection, and continuous monitoring, often at the direct expense of system performance, local control, and user privacy. Upgrading right now means inviting unnecessary instability into your workflow while handing over more telemetry and visual data than any operating system has a right to demand. If your current setup is stable, hold your ground, disable the telemetry bloatware, and give the industry time to sort out its priorities before you ever consider letting a new generation of software onto your machine. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. What is the biggest deal breaker for you when deciding whether or not to upgrade your operating system? Imagine opening up your computer tomorrow morning, only to find out that your operating system has been silently taking screenshots of everything you do every single second of the day, storing it all in a searchable database that hackers would consider the Holy Grail. Now imagine paying over $100 for that privilege, only to be hit with promotional banners for cloud storage inside your own file explorer, a web browser that refuses to let you leave, and mandatory hardware requirements that turn millions of perfectly functional machines into instant e-waste. This isn't a dystopian sci-fi novel. This is the reality of modern personal computing right now, and the direction tech giants are dragging us is genuinely alarming. If you're new to Nolan Tech, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. We need to talk about what is happening to our operating systems because the shift over the past couple of years has crossed a line from being annoying to being fundamentally predatory. For decades, the deal was simple. You bought a computer, you installed an operating system, and that system worked for you. It sat in the background, managed your hardware, launched your apps, and got out of your way. But somewhere along the line, that relationship flipped. Today, your operating system doesn't work for you anymore. It works for the company that made it, harvesting your data, pushing subscriptions, serving targeted advertisements, and treating your personal device as a continuous monetization pipeline. Take a look at the privacy landscape alone. Features like Microsoft's Recall, which captures constant snapshots of your screen, represent a massive boundary violation. Even with encryption layers added later following intense public backlash, the underlying concept is fundamentally broken. Keeping a permanent visual diary of every website you visit, every private chat you type, every financial document you open, creates an irresistible target for malicious actors. It is the digital equivalent of locking your front door while leaving the keys in the ignition, hoping nobody notices. The risk profile is simply too high, and the pressure doesn't stop at personal use. Workplace surveillance is becoming an increasingly terrifying reality, where employers can leverage these exact same monitoring tools to track every second of an employee's day, logging every pause, every distraction, and every keystroke. Your computer is slowly morphing from a productivity tool into a dedicated surveillance terminal, and the defense mechanisms users have had to resort to tell you everything you need to know about the current climate. When major security companies and independent developers start rolling out dedicated blocking utilities specifically designed to stop your operating system from spying on you, we have crossed into uncharted territory. When third-party applications exist purely to protect you from the very software installed on your hardware, the system is fundamentally broken. Microsoft insists that telemetry and captured data remain local or secure, but their track record when it comes to honoring user privacy is less than stellar. Once the architecture and infrastructure are embedded into the system to capture your every move, the temptation to monetize that telemetry becomes entirely too lucrative to resist. This brings us directly to the hardware debate, which exposes a glaring disregard for both everyday users and the global environment. The enforcement of strict hardware baselines, such as mandatory TPM 2.0 chips, specific processor generations, and rigid, secure boot configurations, has left hundreds of millions of perfectly capable machines facing a cliff. Millions of computers that run modern applications effortlessly, handle heavy workloads, and serve their owners brilliantly are suddenly deemed obsolete, not because they lack the raw power, but because they lack a specific security module or a generational stamp of approval. The result? A staggering mountain of unnecessary electronic waste, driven entirely by arbitrary corporate mandates rather than genuine technological necessity. When security updates sunset for older operating systems, users are left stranded between terrible choices. Pay an ongoing annual subscription fee just to keep your existing hardware secure, buy an entirely new PC that you didn't budget for, or take a massive security gamble by running unsupported software. For businesses, extended security update programs turn basic foundational safety into a recurring subscription cost that scales up year after year. For consumers, it is an aggressive nudge toward forced obsolescence. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. Compounding this hardware frustration is the relentless wave of bloatware and sponsored software that greets you right out of the box. You perform a clean installation of a modern operating system, expecting a pristine, efficient workspace. Instead, you're immediately greeted by pre-installed trial games, third-party media apps, expired antivirus subscriptions that nag you daily, and promotional trials that reinstall themselves even after you painstakingly remove them. It feels less like a professional operating system and more like a cheap smartphone loaded with carrier junkware. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. Then, of course, there's the most insulting aspect of all: advertisements built directly into a product you paid for. Whether you purchased a license outright or paid for it bundled into the price of a new laptop, you are a paying customer. Yet, modern operating systems treat your interface as digital billboard space. Open your Start menu to launch a critical application, and you are met with app suggestions and store recommendations for games you never asked for. Lock your screen, and the gorgeous photography is subtly overlaid with travel tips and promotional links disguised as scenic views. Open your file manager to locate a document, and you're confronted with banner ads pushing cloud storage upgrades. Dive into your system settings to adjust your display or audio, and you'll find promotional recommendations for office suites and gaming passes mixed right into the configuration menus. Even notifications are weaponized, popping up while you're in the middle of deep work to remind you to subscribe to a service or switch your default browser. User polls and community sentiment consistently show that an overwhelming majority of users despise seeing ads in an environment they paid to use. Yet, these promotional elements cannot be fully disabled through normal settings, often requiring deep registry modifications or third-party tweaking tools just to maintain a clean workspace. This aggressive monetization strategy bleeds directly into cloud integration, most notably through aggressive cloud storage syncing. During initial setup routines, core local directories like your desktop, documents and pictures are frequently enrolled in cloud backups by default, often without explicit, clear-cut user consent. Users routinely discover that their personal files have been quietly uploaded to remote servers, blurring the lines between what is stored locally on their physical drive and what lives in the cloud. When free storage tiers are inevitably maxed out by a handful of high-resolution photos or video clips, the system bombards you with storage-full warnings, turning basic file management into a constant sales pitch. Even if you attempt to sign out and disable the service entirely, background synchronization processes often linger in the background, consuming system resources and draining battery life. For gamers and performance enthusiasts, the hidden costs of these modern operating systems are equally frustrating. Virtualization-based security features, enabled by default on clean installations, isolate critical system memory using hardware virtualization. While sound in theory for enterprise environments, it introduces a measurable performance penalty, slicing frame rates in games and draining valuable processing power right out of the box. Competitive players who rely on every single millisecond of latency reduction and every available frame find themselves losing performance due to security layers they never asked for. Add in the fact that marquee gaming features promised as generational leaps forward, like advanced asset streaming technologies, have seen sparse adoption across the vast majority of titles, and the upgrade justification begins to dissolve entirely. Background resource consumption tells a similar story. Modern systems idle with significantly higher memory footprints and heavier background CPU usage than their predecessors. Constant telemetry transmissions, persistent AI assistant services, active widget panels, and cloud indexing hooks all run simultaneously, chewing through RAM and impacting overall system responsiveness. Even stability can feel compromised, with routine updates occasionally triggering reboot failures, driver conflicts, and peripheral issues that force users into emergency troubleshooting sessions. When you weigh these drawbacks against the actual improvements, which often amount to little more than cosmetic tweaks to taskbars, centered menus, and window snapping layouts that third-party utilities have handled better for years, the equation simply does not favor upgrading. The overarching trajectory of modern software development points firmly toward a future built on recurring revenue, constant data harvesting, and subscription-locked features. For those looking to escape this cycle, the alternative path requires weighing some compromises. Sticking with a mature, stable operating system as long as humanly possible remains a viable defensive strategy. Utilizing extended security options for legacy systems can often be cheaper and infinitely less frustrating than diving headfirst into an ecosystem defined by ads and invasive telemetry. For users ready to break free from the traditional tech duopoly, exploring alternative ecosystems offers a breath of fresh air. Chromebooks provide lightweight, secure, and straightforward computing for basic daily tasks without the constant software bloat. Apple's desktop ecosystem, while carrying its own set of closed garden restrictions and premium hardware costs, avoids the blatant in-OS advertising model that plagues competitors. Meanwhile, the Linux landscape has matured immensely, with user-friendly distributions, incredible gaming compatibility layers, and vibrant community support, making it a legitimate refuge for anyone willing to step outside the mainstream bubble. If you do find yourself forced into modern Windows environments due to hardware life cycles or professional software dependencies, the key is aggressive mitigation. Strip away the telemetry, purge the pre-installed bloatware immediately, disable persistent AI hooks and recall features, swap your login method to a local account to sever the persistent link to cloud tracking, and deploy third-party customization tools to clean up the user interface. Above all, resist the urge to adopt new major platform releases on day one. Let the tech community document the inevitable launch disasters. Let the bug reports pile up and make the developers earn your trust rather than handing it over blindly. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. What's the main reason keeping you from upgrading your current operating system?